Hey everybody! Welcome to the Quickie Wheels Facebook page. So excited to have y'all here. Some of you guys may know me, some of you may not. My name is actually Angie Kiger, and I am the Clinical Strategy and Education Manager for Sunrise North America, or actually the United States. Background-wise, been working with wheelchairs professionally for, I date myself here, about 20 years. Sometimes I can't imagine I'm that old, but anyway, been with Sunrise for the past 8 years. Previous 12, I worked at a hospital up here in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Excited to come at you. This is my first Facebook Live, like ever, having done on my own personal one. I know, it's crazy. Luckily, if I'm going to do an interview for the first time on Quickie Facebook page and do a live, I brought in an absolute veteran and expert. So to me, he really needs no introduction, but I'm going to pitch it over to Cory Lee so he can kind of give you guys a quick intro on who he is and whatever else you got to say right now, Cory.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this with you today. I'm honored to be your first guest for a Facebook Live, so that's exciting. And thanks everyone for watching. If you have a comment during, please drop us a comment. We'll try to answer your questions, I promise. But I have used Quickie wheelchairs from a very young age, and I've traveled the world. So my full-time gig is as a travel blogger, and I blog at curbfreewithcorylee.com, which I started about 7 years ago. And in the past 7 years, I've been fortunate enough to travel to 37 countries and all 7 continents. So it's been a whirlwind, and my Quickie wheels have definitely gotten a lot of miles on them.
That's awesome. I love it. So what I do want to do is give you guys a quick disclaimer before we even really get started, because I want you guys to, I'm very much of an authentic person. Like I said, I've worked with folks for 20 years during my career, and then actually have a cousin who has cerebral palsy. She's 9 years older than me. So I often say, I grew up, back in the, well before I think Cory was probably alive, well, in the 80s, helping out with Special Olympics and all sorts of things. So kind of been tinkering around with wheelchairs for quite some time with a bunch of Susan's friends. So with that said, I met Cory probably personally 3-4 years ago, Cory?
Yeah, I think about 3 years ago, maybe.
Lost track of time at this point. I had actually found out about his blog. I started following him, and I was like, oh, really neat. And then one of my very good coworker friends, Bob might be watching, is a guy named Bob Nolan. He's our regional director down in the southern part of our country here in the U.S. And he's like, hey, I know that guy Cory. And I said, you do? He's like, yeah, I'm the first person who ever introduced Cory to a power wheelchair. I was like, what? No way. So that's how I got to know Cory. You may be wondering, as we talk about his new wheelchair today, and we're going to be very, once again, transparent. Again, Cory got this through insurance and went through his supplier. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't know he got a new chair until I saw it on social. And I saw it on Facebook. I was like, oh my gosh, Cory got a new chair. So I was pretty excited. I was like, hey, a lot of folks are in this pandemic right now. Wheelchair evaluations are being done through telehealth, some face-to-face. I would love it if you would hop on and kind of answer some people's questions about wheelchair evaluations, and just kind of do a back and forth between the two of us. So that's kind of what Cory's doing a favor to us, which we appreciate, and hopping on here. So with that said, Cory, give me a little bit of a background on you. As you see me reach up, I've got my phone here. It's got my questions in front of me. So
Yeah.
I have to be able to make sure I know what's going on, staying on track. But, in some of your mobility history, I know, like I said, Bob Nolan, I believe, was one of the people who helped you first learn how to drive a power wheelchair. You and your mother, Sandy, told some hysterical stories. But I guess give me the serious side first, then we'll talk about some of the silly sides in a minute.
Okay, so at the age of 2, I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, and really the most steps that I could ever take was about 8 steps. And then I would just fall down and hit the ground. And my mom started noticing that I just kept falling after a few steps. And so she got concerned. We did a muscle biopsy, and then it was determined that I did have spinal muscular atrophy type 2. And so that was at the age of 2. And then at the age of 4, right after I turned 4, I got my first wheelchair, which was actually a manual chair. And I started using it a little bit, but my mom again started noticing how weak I seemed to be. after trying to roll a manual chair throughout the day, I would just get really weak and my arms couldn't roll it anymore. And so then we started talking about getting a powered wheelchair. And so right before I started school, I actually got my first powered wheelchair. I believe it was about a week before I started school. So I was very, very new to it. And I remember like on the first day of school even, I ended up running a kid over that was in my class accidentally, I promise. And it was like a whole debacle. So it was definitely a big learning experience, I think, from a young age, and just trying to, get used to it. And I remember like even right after I got it, I was like so nervous about driving it there for like a while. Like, I mean, probably like the first year, it just kind of freaked me out, like, learning how to drive it. But then the more that I did it, the more that I got used to it. And now I think I'm an expert at driving it. So
I would say so. We've hung out a little bit, not too far from your hometown there. I've actually been over to your house and checked it out. I would say, especially for you can probably hear both of our southern draws. He's got more of a southern drawl than I do, but we're both from kind of some rural areas, and I've definitely seen where he and his family live, and he definitely is an expert with driving around there. So another quick disclaimer: if you guys hear some jinglings of collars and stuff, Cory or barks. Cory and I both have dogs. We're both at our homes, so you may hear some real life. It's part of Facebook Live, right? So anyway, so Bob Nolan actually worked for a company named Henley Medical. Was that right, Cory, at the time?
Yep. Yeah, Henley Medical's in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is only about 40 minutes from where I live. And so I've used Henley ever since I got my first powered wheelchair, and still use them today even.
Yep, I just saw Sandy pop in there. So, hey, Sandy, that's Cory's mom.
He was saying that Bob even talked me into going adaptive water skiing one time. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Bob Nolan, you definitely were meant to be in sales, bud. But anyway, my favorite story, I think, is the one that Sandy told me about how when young Cory, who initially was a little bit shy, nervous to take his new power wheelchair to school, all of a sudden comes home with pockets full of quarters. Cory, you've got to tell before we jump into your current chair story, you got to tell that story really quick, because I think that one's hysterical.
Oh yeah, for sure. So when I was in elementary school, it was probably like second or third grade. I was really young. I would go at recess. All of the other kids wanted to hop on the back of my chair and ride around the playground. And so one day I decided, like, maybe I could make some money from this and, get some ice cream or like something good for my time. And so I started charging all the other kids a quarter to take a ride. And they lined up, all the way down the playground, and everybody wanted a ride. They would start like bringing their money to recess just so they could have a ride. And I got ice cream like every day in elementary school. So it was.
Yeah, that is not something as a company that we promote. But just saying that was well back before Cory and I both were adults. But I think that's hysterical. He laughs and says that it's clear that he was meant to be an entrepreneur. So that is very true.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, so let's just get into it. We're gonna start. I've done many wheelchair evals in my life, so I'll try not to treat you like a client or a patient, but I want us to kind of think back to when you were considering needing a new power wheelchair. What time, like how long ago was that, and kind of what steps you took?
Yeah, so I would say about 2 years ago, it started like coming into my mind, like maybe I could get a new power chair, because with SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, my muscles do get a bit weaker every year. So I have noticed a little bit of a decrease in function over the past 5 years almost since I got my last wheelchair. And so I really just kind of wanted a new wheelchair to be able to, better support me. And also, as a traveler, someone that travels a lot, I put a lot of miles on the other chair, and, really just needed a new one, not only for function, but also because I do put a lot of miles on the chair pretty quickly. And another thing that I was really excited about with the new wheelchair, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later on, was the See Me feature. And I had the See Me on my old chair, but with the new wheelchair, I can now go a faster speed, even with the See Me. So I'm a big fan of like going as fast as possible. And so that was a really a big reason why I wanted it also, in addition to all the other stuff.
Absolutely. We talk about medically necessary, so we're going to touch on all of that stuff too. We're going to talk about all that stuff. Hang on one second. Once again, real life here, guys. You have to wait. Okay. Real life here, guys. With we've got little people running around too. Beauty of COVID, right? Anyways, let me get back at it. So, we talk about medically necessary. So that is a, I use medically necessary. That is what our insurance companies, what the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services require in order for funding to be approved for any sort of medical device. And so it's difficult because, with everything, regulations aren't exactly things that we always agree with from the standpoint of what we believe is medically necessary, what we love for our folks who utilize products to have. However, that's the way the funding system works. So the benefit of being able to have a great understanding of funding and how that goes into medically necessary is a very big benefit. I always encourage folks who utilize complex rehab technology to have a really good understanding of that. We can definitely give you guys resources to understand that as we go through. And so as a clinician, as Cory was saying, due to the diagnosis and the nature of spinal muscular atrophy, he was seeing some decline in his overall function. And for me, as I'm sitting here, he's translating that ability to be able to access things. I'm guessing, and I have not seen Cory in a couple of years, but because of the different strength, changing, like maybe his seating posture may have changed a little bit. Maybe he got different backs and got different cushion or whatnot. So just really looking at where he was happening and kind of decreasing the chance for him to develop any skeletal deformities, any sort of pressure injuries, any of that kind of good stuff. So once again,
I can talk about a couple of the things that were medically necessary that I did need within the chair. So for me, one of the major things is like over the past few years, I've seen a significant decrease in the ability to lift my arms up. So I can't really raise my arms up I can't lift my elbows up off the armrest, I guess, anymore. And so by doing that, I just really needed a new type of armrest, and also the knee pads. My legs now, they are contracted due to SMA and just sitting down for 26 years. So I do need the knee pads now. I really just needed several different new things that would, I guess, make my life easier overall and more functioning for me. Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So you decided a couple years ago, like, hey, I need to start thinking about a new wheelchair. As someone who is, has been working with a durable medical equipment company for a number of years, what were some of the things that you thought that needed to happen, and how did you go about initiating that evaluation process?
Yeah. So I called Henley Medical, which is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I talked about them a little while ago. They are the company that I've used since I was 4 years old for my very first wheelchair. So they know me very, very well. And I let them just know that I thought it was time to maybe look into getting a new power wheelchair. And they immediately were on top of it, setting up appointments with a PT that came in and evaluated me and measured and did all the fun stuff, And so that's kind of where it started, was by calling Henley Medical Center in Chattanooga and getting them just to kind of get the process going along. And that started back I believe it was about a year ago. And, or I guess this past January, maybe, is when the process really started kicking off. And I saw the PT and did all of that. And then a few months later, I got the new wheelchair.
Very good. Very good. You may have seen on the screen a couple of minutes ago, guys, or a couple of seconds ago. If you do have any questions, pop in with them. I'm just kind of walking through some general interview questions, but we definitely will have time at the end and want people to ask questions too. We want this to be very much of a back and forth between the audience too. So Cory has mentioned Henley Medical a couple of times. Just as a quick little side note there, when you are choosing your complex rehab technology supplier equipment company to work with, that is up to you. Part of it has to do with insurance, but I think it's something that sometimes people don't necessarily realize is that is a relationship that you're building. It is a team process. I have some folks who like Cory have, had experiences that have been very positive. They've been with their wheelchair guy or gal for their entire life. Or some other folks who maybe have some difficulties and move to a different company. And it's really and truly what I want to put out there is it's something that it's up to the individual to decide. And so I'm sure, Cory, when you were looking for, or, if you have any advice to give people on choosing or working with somebody, or how to, anything that you're like, man, this is what I really like about a company.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Henley because, when I go in there now, it's very comfortable. They know my history. They know the type of chair that I want. And they've kind of been there since the beginning. So, I know every single person there. It's like family. So the owner, Tom, he's been a good friend for many years. And they're always, really focused on getting me what I need in order to make me live more independently. And that's something that I think that they see more than anything else, is that they want me to be as independent as possible and able to, have a fulfilling life in whatever chair that I get. And so I think that's really important if someone is trying to, find a company to help them get a new chair. Really make sure that they see you as an individual and that they have your best interest in mind.
Absolutely. Henley is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, guys. So it's one of those things where we're not saying that Henley can, be able to work for you if you're out in California or wherever you are, but just really making sure you build that rapport because they're a teammate. Now, we talked about the teammate from the wheelchair provider side, but also the therapist side. Cory talked about how he had to have a new PT evaluation, and this is really important. There are some, larger hospitals, smaller hospitals, that have wheelchair and seating teams. Some great ones out there. I know that some of my folks, my friends, were going to tune in and watch this today. So hey to those guys who were able to join us. And there are also some really great people that are doing doing wheelchair values in home care settings, some school-based settings. So really talking with your therapist and saying, hey, like, I need to look to getting a new chair. Do you have experience with this? Do you feel comfortable with doing this? And really being okay to ask those questions. And because if the person says, hey, I've got my best friend, she may tune into this or not. She's an occupational therapist. And she will tell you that her specialty is actually feeding management. And so she's like, yeah, you don't want me specking out a wheelchair, because she specializes in feeding for little ones from 0 to 3. So, really talking with your professionals and having that team approach is absolutely key. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty. You talked to Henley, you got your PT eval, and then it was time to start really choosing things. Now I'm gonna have Cory walk through this the way clinicians do as far as justification goes, which I'm guessing probably could be opposite of what Cory looks at. But first of all, for a clinician and for your wheelchair provider, we're looking at seating and positioning really is the number one thing. So Cory, when we talk about your cushion, back, headrest, that's what we call a seating system. So anything helping you with your position and posture. So what were some of the things that you were telling Henley that you needed to look at specifically for seating?
I think that the most important thing for me is the cushion. I think, if I'm going to be sitting somewhere, sometimes 18 hours a day. I hate to say it, but it's true. And probably
but you're doing pressure reliefs to prevent pressure injuries, right?
Well, that's another good thing about the chair. So I did stress. I'm glad you brought it up. With the new chair, I wanted the ability to even recline back throughout the day. I do that multiple times a day, absolutely. Just reclining to kind of relieve some pressure off of my butt and legs from sitting all day. So that's incredibly important. The cushion to have the most comfort. And I would say absolutely the See Me feature was a huge thing for me as someone that, goes to a lot of travel conferences and loves to network. I wanted the ability to actually elevate the chair and be able to be at eye level of other people as I'm talking to them. Mm-hmm. So I would say the cushion, the comfort, the ability to tilt and recline, and then the See Me were kind of the three biggest features for me.
Mm-hmm. And how we tie that in, guys, if you're thinking to yourself, how does this work for funding? The F word, sometimes I call it, of our industry. Sorry guys, but it really kind of is. But when you're thinking about that, as Cory's talking to me, someone who's been doing wheelchairs for a while, I'm automatically translated into decrease the potential for pressure injuries, to accommodate for some contractures he mentioned that he had before. Unfortunately, it is not durable medical. Funding sources don't necessarily agree that social interaction and, quite honestly, to me, Cory, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm not in a wheelchair, but mental health of honestly of being able to be up with your peers, that's not necessarily something that's considered to be medically necessary. So sometimes we really have to look at what is medically necessary. So with the CME, which is that's our trademark name for our Power Elevate system, which you can go up, there it is right there, you can go up to 12 inches of height. And as Cory was mentioning before, as far as the speeds and whatnot go, is that you can go at a walking speed, which is really nice. I won't get into all the nitty gritty about all the testing and whatnot that goes into that, but that's key for making sure balance of the chair and the system and feeling safe when you are elevated. And so, looking at, if Cory needs to be able to complete some of his activities of daily living, he mentioned some weakness in his upper extremities, being able to do some of his ADLs or mobility related ADLs, he can, with CME in theory, be able to be elevated to be able to reach and to do those things a little bit more independently, which is key.
Yeah, as you saw from the photo, I was helping put the ornaments up. So that's something I would have never been able to do, 10 years ago, is reach the top part of the tree. And I mean, even something like that, being able to reach into cabinets or into the refrigerator, or to the thermostat. I mean, so many things that I can now do with the CME.
Yes. Okay, so that covered seating and power seating. Now, traveler extraordinaire, talk to me about the base. So basically, everything in that picture, you guys, that was green and below. Let's talk about what did you specifically need as far as performance for your wheelchair base, and how are you making some of those decisions?
Yeah. So I really just wanted. I went to Henley and kind of told them that for the base, I wanted something similar to my past chairs. I definitely needed good wheels and something that's very, very durable, because often I'm on some off-road terrains every now and then. Nothing too wild, but as a traveler, someone that I went to Costa Rica last year and kind of went into some rougher terrains. So doing things like that, I need something that's durable and can withstand that. And then that green color, I'll pop the picture up again. I really just love the way that it looked. I saw another chair in Henley that had that same color, and as soon as I saw it, I told the guy at Henley, I was like, I want that. I definitely want that. It's bright, it's bold, it'll grab attention, and I hope it gets as many eyes on me as it can, because I hope we're raising awareness when we're out traveling the world, and showing that wheelchair users can be out there doing some pretty cool things.
Love it. And I love the perspective too, as far as I know, sometimes people, it can be difficult, I'm sure, to have people staring or looking at you and wondering, but it sounds like from the color standpoint, you're embracing it. You want to stand out. You want people to say, hey, look at that guy over there.
Right. Yeah. That's something I've kind of struggled with over the years. So, 5 years ago, I would have never said that. But now, after I've traveled and kind of gotten out there, I'm now like, if people are seeing me, then they're realizing that people with disabilities can be out in the world. So the more that I'm seen, the more of a message that I hope it spreads. And I think we do have a question here from Ryan, if we want to go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Ryan's saying, what are the differences I noticed between the COVID process compared to a more typical non-pandemic setting? And that's definitely something that's been a little bit of a challenge, but Henley made it as easy as possible. So I did the PT eval and met with Henley back in January. And then after the new chair came in, we were in the depths of the pandemic. And so now I am really doing a lot of FaceTime with Henley. I have been up there a couple times and wearing masks, meeting outside during the summer, but otherwise it's been sending them videos. Like whenever I get the wheelchair and they've done an adjustment on it, I'll take a video if it's not 100%, like I need it. and then send them the video through email. And that just gives them a way to kind of see what I'm talking about, and I can show them that way. So they've been phenomenal about that. And I've sent a lot of videos over the past few months, and they've been very receptive of that.
I would say any sort of video conferencing has definitely become worth its weight in gold, maybe, if not more, or what are the Bitcoins or whatever those things are these days as far as expense and worth. But it is absolutely key. And being confident, I think I would like to encourage users to be confident in just saying, hey, this is what I feel comfortable with. This is what I don't feel comfortable with. And that could also be, part of what, if you're new to seeking out, a wheelchair or working with a wheelchair company, that could be something that one of your questions, like, hey, do you have the ability to do telehealth? Do you have the ability for me to contact you via a video conferencing situation? Because for my needs and my health, I want to be cautious about this. However, I still need my chair serviced. I was talking to a friend of mine who, he's quadriplegic, lives up in New York City, and he was telling me, when it came to, he had to get new batteries for his chair, and he's like, I have to have my batteries. Clearly, I drive a power wheelchair, and he was telling me how the supplier that he worked with, actually, when they came out to work on the chair, came completely wearing all of the PPE kind of to protect Jose and also the folks that from their company, and they actually took the chair down to their van, did the work, and then brought it back up. Cory lives in a more rural area. That was actually New York City, so that was kind of like to be outside. He didn't come into to the gentleman's apartment. He was like, hey, let me take it out and work on it, so as not to spread that. So really feeling comfortable to step up and say that to folks too. So a couple of things that Cory said about the base really quick that I want to point out, because if you guys are thinking, like Cory was, some buzz terms or words that you may use when talking with your supplier. Cory talks about durability or driving and whatnot. Suspension is something that is key. And think about suspension on a car. It's not exactly the same on a wheelchair, but when you're thinking about what's going to keep me from jostling around, because I know with Cory and having some limited trunk stability, and that's decreased muscle control over time, he needs to be able to feel, even if he's driving over the rocky terrain, that the chair is able to handle the different terrain and kind of absorb that suspension. So actually this type of suspension, Cory's going to flip back to that picture that Cory got. That's actually, it's called Spider Track. The reason why it was called Spider Track is because, like a spider, when you go down different inclines or going over things, it creeps and crawls like a spider. So keeping the wheels level as possible, and using those suspension arms to be able to make that happen. So explaining that to your supplier, like, hey, this is, I can't be jostled around in my chair. One of my friends who uses a chair, she says that, she's able to stay up longer in her chair and work longer hours. She's noticed she's been in a power wheelchair since she was 2 years old. And she said, suspension has changed over time. She noticed her ability to just, as she's gotten older, to be able to stay awake because her body's not working to keep her upright is actually improved.
Yeah, that's something that's really important to me also, because with SMA, I do have weak upper body stability. And even if I'm going over bumps or over cobblestones in Europe, my head kind of like gets tossed around a lot. And so, by it being smoother and having better suspension, it does enable me to, not have my head just like falling forward if I'm going over those cobblestones, and I can have a more smooth ride.
Absolutely. Another thing to think about would be, and Cory, I know because of when you got your first chair, probably your first chair was a rear wheel drive. Is that right? Big wheel. Sandy, do you remember?
It's been too long. I haven't had that.
Have you had a rear wheel drive chair? I'm going to see if you were able to kind of compare, if you've had experience comparing and contrasting mid versus front versus rear.
Yeah, I think I definitely have, and I have noticed a big difference in the smoothness of a ride and in the suspension over the past, I would say, 10 years or so. So between the different wheelchairs, between this chair and my previous chair, a little bit of a difference and better, perhaps, but especially like 2 chairs ago, I would say a huge increase since then.
One more time for the back of that picture, because since we do have folks watching that utilize wheelchairs, want to make just a little more education. I can't help it. I'm a clinical educator.
Yeah.
You see that large wheel in the middle. When you talk with folks, your providers, whether it's your therapist or working with your CRT supplier, talking about mid versus front versus rear wheel drive. Cory drives a mid wheel drive chair. That biggest wheel is in the middle, thus mid wheel drive. There are folks that utilize all three types that will say, for their environments that they're in, for different features that are available for the feel. I always encourage people, if you've never utilized a power wheelchair before, to try all three configurations if you can. I would say by far mid-wheel drive has become the most popular. I remember when it first came out in the industry, that style came out, kind of the whole turn on a dime, and because that's really how it's a smaller turning radius that's required. But there are also, like I said, other types, definitely go to different, go to our website, check them out. You'll see the big wheels in different spots. So, do some research on that too. That's helpful. And last but not least, I think is important. And Cory, I believe you guys have Easy Lock, right, for your vehicle?
I do. Yes.
Yes. Talking about what's compatible with, even though he's got Easy Lock here, when you go abroad, obviously you want those tie downs that have been transit tested. So making sure that those questions are asked. What chairs come with the transit tested tie downs? Here's a little tidbit, which Cory, you may or may not have known, but don't worry, you're good. Occupant tested transit tie downs are a key thing to ask for. Cory, you're good. We do occupant tested. Don't worry. But making sure and asking about those fine little things, which maybe I just taught Cory something, because it might be transit tested, but hasn't been tested with an occupant in it. No, we don't put like real people in them. Of course, utilizing the Transportation Safety Board dummies. I don't know if that's still appropriate to say, but mannequins, dummies, whatever.
Whatever.
So, yeah, having that.
And that's also something that I actually asked Henley, I remember back in January, was, will I be able to, have the Easy Lock on the new chair? That's a necessity for me. And then also the tie down spots on the new chair. So I know, traveling internationally, they're not going to have an Easy Lock, as you said. So I always have to use the tie downs if I'm international, or even traveling domestically, getting like a rental car or something like that. I'm going to be using the tie downs. And so that's something that I made sure that my new chair would have when I was talking to Henley about it back in January.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys have any more questions. We've been chatting along here. I forget, I hadn't talked to Cory in a while. It's kind of fun just to chat, but it's not just about him. If anybody else has any questions, chime in. Yeah. Definitely, I'm thinking, the correct me if I'm wrong, Cory, but as far as, the funding process went, I'm guessing therapist wrote a letter of medical necessity. It was submitted to insurance, and then you've got to wait a little bit. But yeah, and if there's any sort of another thing, were there any appeals or anything that had to go through with your chair, or did insurance give it a green light from the start?
Yeah, luckily no appeals. So insurance kind of gave it the green light within, it was actually pretty quickly. So I think only like less than a month, it was approved and we were good to go. So it was actually really the smoothest process that I've ever had, like getting a new chair. It was so quick. And there was, I don't know if it was pre-pandemic, but it was just like a really easy process this time, luckily. Probably like embracing me for the rest of the year.
Yeah, the stars aligned. I remember I mentioned my friend Jenny. I don't know. I've got to link you up with Jenny at some point, Cory. Jenny Siegel lives out in Colorado. She does a lot for the organization Unite for CRT. She's an advocate. She has been using a power wheelchair since she was 2 years old. She was the youngest person in the state of Denver back in the 80s. Like I think she's 2 years. She's 2 years younger than I am, or 2 or 3 years. If Jenny was on here, she would correct me if I got it wrong. But she actually, when her power wheelchair, most recent one, went through, she went and was evaluated by a facility out in Colorado where some of my good friends work. And I remember as soon as she got like one denial from her primary insurance, she was emailing her therapist and me going, what do? I want to appeal. I'm ready to fight this. We're like, hold on, you still have a backup insurance. Let's run it through there. Yeah. But with that said, funding is not always easy. You know, Cory mentioned it was, and I think it's important. And Cory has actually jumped in and helped us, and I mean, this is the global, national us as far as the industry goes. And when we have those national call-in days and all sorts of stuff, really encouraging people. And if you don't follow or have never heard of Unite for the number CRT, check them out on Facebook. It's an advocacy group, like grassroots organization that folks who are wheelchair users have put together to help with encouraging proper legislation. Also check out an organization called NCART, NCART. Oh my gosh, NCART. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with acronyms at times. Basically, they have a site, access, the number 2, CRT. .com, and that really helps staying on top of things, because when we're working towards overcoming those funding difficulties and encouraging our legislators to get things done, they're the first line of folks who know.
Yeah, awesome.
Any questions, or are we gonna?
I don't see any coming in. If anyone has a question later on, feel free to leave a comment, and
yeah, we'll definitely answer those for sure.
I'll come back and try to answer it. If it's for me, or I'm sure Angie will if it's for her also. So just leave us a comment.
Yep. All right. Well, we've been talking for almost 37 minutes. Holy cow. See, we talk the wheelchair nerd in me. You talk wheelchair stuff. I'm just like, I'm all about it. So if you weren't, Cory said, if you weren't able to join us live for this, we're going to keep the recording up. Feel free to reach out to one of the two of us. We are definitely happy to get back to you. And yeah.
Thank you all so much for watching, and I really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll definitely try to answer. But yeah, thank you, Angie, for having me on today. I'm really I hope your first live was a good one.
Yes, I think it went okay. I haven't watched it, but I think I sounded okay, minus the dog coming in, and no, not right now. Can't come in the room.
Right. I think you're a pro now, so we're ready for round 2.
All right, we'll definitely we'll figure something else out, Cory, about who we can interview.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It would be.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good day and a very Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Well, sorry, I beat my horn accidentally. Again, this is live, so this is live.